So this is the gospel reading for this Sunday, Transfiguration Sunday, from the gospel according to Matthew, the 17th chapter. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And Jesus was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. And suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is so good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 dwellings here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them. And from that cloud a voice said, "This is my Son, the Beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and he touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. And as they were coming down from the mountaintop, Jesus ordered them, "Tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." May these words of my mouth and may the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight, O God, for it is you and you alone who is our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So we are standing on the threshold of a new season in the church. This Sunday, Transfiguration Sunday, is the last Sunday of the season of Epiphany, before the beginning of Lent this Wednesday, on Ash Wednesday. Are you ready for the change? I hope you are, because if you're not, you are at risk for experiencing some theological whiplash. That's because this week, in our church, we celebrate both Fat Tuesday and Ash Wednesday. And although Fat Tuesday is not technically part of the Christian calendar, it is something that we have celebrated in our church for many years now. And Fat Tuesday and Ash Wednesday could not be more different. Fat Tuesday, of course, is a huge party. A celebration. It's festive. The idea behind Fat Tuesday is that if you know, starting tomorrow, you are going to give up something for the 40-day season of Lent, then the idea of Fat Tuesday is that you will spend the day before you give up that thing for 40 days gorging yourself on as much of that thing as you possibly can. In New Orleans, they call Fat Tuesday Mardi Gras, which, of course, is French for Fat Tuesday. And they translate it into French because it sounds more fun. I mean, really, which sounds more appealing to you? Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras? Oh, it's Fat Tuesday? Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. To being fat on a Tuesday. But, my friends, I have good news. You do not have to go to New Orleans to go wild and crazy. We know how to party in the Midwest too. We know how to party in the Custer Community Church. We do some crazy stuff because on Fat Tuesday, we are going to be serving pancakes for supper. In the evening. Because we're crazy like that. Ash Wednesday is a much more somber occasion. You come to church not for pancakes, but to be reminded that you are a sinner in need of a Savior. You come to church to be reminded that you are mortal, that you come from the dust and to one day return to the dust. Ash Wednesday marks the beginning of a 40-day journey that begins with Jesus tempted in the wilderness and ends with Jesus hanging on a cross. Way to harsh my buzz, man. Actually, I confess that I love the Ash Wednesday service. It's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites not just because I get to smear a little bit of ash on the forehead and get better and better with each person who comes up. And just so you know, if you are the first one in the line, it's going to be real dark and real thick. But I love to hear those words. I love to hear those words. Remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. Because what I hear in those words is, remember, after all, you're only human. Have a little bit of grace and understanding for yourself. Because after all, you are only human. But if you're here on Tuesday night for pancakes and you're here on Wednesday night for ashes, and I do hope that you will come to both, I hope that you have marked this in your calendars, right? Tuesday night pancakes, Wednesday night ashes. You will definitely notice that there is a significant shift in the mood that happens from one night to the next. To why the huge 180-degree turn? Why the sudden about-face? Why go from party to penitence in the span of 24 hours? I think it's because the truth is that our lives can be like that too. Real life can be like that. Right? I mean, sometimes you think everything is good and everything is going fine, and then with just one phone call, everything can change. Life is full of ups and downs, and life can include some very high ups, but it also can include some very deep and low downs. And our gospel reading this morning, the story of the transfiguration, of Jesus' transformation on that mountaintop, is in many ways about life's ups and downs, about the peaks and valleys that we experience. According to Matthew's gospel, and just so you know, the story is recorded in Matthew and in Mark and in Luke. We just happened to get Matthew's account this year. But according to Matthew's gospel, Jesus got up early one morning and took his closest confidants, took Peter and James and John up to the top of the mountain. Now for his disciples, that piece of it would not have been uncommon or unusual. The Bible tells us that Jesus regularly sought isolated places to pray, that Jesus would frequently leave the crowds to have some time to pray, either by himself or just with a few close friends. But this time, on top of that mountain, something very unusual happened. Jesus was transformed, was transfigured right before their eyes. The scriptures say that Jesus' face shone with the light of the sun, that his clothing even was transformed, that his clothes became dazzling white. And suddenly, as Jesus is shining with his radiant light, Moses, the great lawgiver, and Elijah, the great prophet, appear and start speaking with Jesus. You got to remember, these are some A-list celebrities as far as the disciples are concerned. This is quite a party. And not wanting the party to end, Peter says, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. If you want, I'll make 3 dwellings. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." Have you ever thrown a party, and even after everyone else has gone home, one person just kind of sticks around? Sticks around not to help you clean up, but just sticks around and keep hanging out as though the party is still going? That's Peter. That's what Peter is doing. Only he doesn't want to stick around for another hour after the party is going over. He wants to stay there permanently. He's talking about building houses, building dwellings. He's not planning to leave that mountain ever. He wants to stay up on that mountain. He wants to stay in that moment in time forever. And can you blame him? I mean, really, can you blame him? Surrounded by his heroes of the faith, visibly seeing the glory of God, audibly hearing the voice of God, why would he want to leave that place? But no sooner does Peter say that we ought to think about building some homes and staying here forever, than the voice of God declares, "This is my Son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." And boom! Just like that, the party is over. Moses and Elijah are gone. Jesus is back to looking like just another ordinary man. And not only is the majesty and the mystery now gone, but as they start going back down the mountain, back to work and back to real life, Jesus starts hinting about how he's going to die soon. Jesus tells them that they aren't supposed to speak about what they witness until after he has been raised from the dead. Talk about a sudden shift in the mood, right? From a mountaintop moment in God's presence to the valley of the shadow of death. Is it any wonder that Peter just wanted to build houses and stay there forever? But while Peter is saying that he and the disciples should build houses, should build, as the Bible says, dwellings, is rather unusual, the impulse to build some kind of marker or monument is actually very much in keeping with the tradition of the Jewish people, what they have always done when they have encountered God. You might remember the story in Genesis 28, when Jacob is fleeing from his brother Esau, and he goes to sleep in the wilderness, and he dreams of a great ladder, a great staircase on which angels are ascending and descending. Jacob wakes up, and he says, "Surely the Lord was in this place, and I did not know it." And then he builds a marker of stones, a pillar of stones to mark the place, which he calls Bethel, the house of God. Or you might recall the story from the book of Joshua, when Joshua led the people of Israel across the river Jordan into the promised land. When the waters of the Jordan River parted, Joshua took 12 stones from the miraculously dry riverbed and made a ring of 12 stones to mark the place where the Israelites first camped in the promised land. In one of the earliest battles between the Israelites and the Philistines, when Israel felt terrified and certain that they would be defeated, and then suddenly, because of the prayers of the prophet Samuel, the voice from God sounded from the heavens, and all the Philistines panicked, and they started running around in a panic, so that Israel not only defeated them, but chased them clear back into Philistine territory. The prophet Samuel placed a stone to mark how far the Israelites chased those fleeing Philistines. And he named the place Ebenezer, meaning the stone of help. On a side note, if you've ever wondered about that line in the hymn, "Come thou fount of every blessing. You remember that line? Here I raise my Ebenezer, giving thanks for having come. That's where that comes from. Ebenezer is that story. The point, my friends, is that Israel had long built structures to mark places where they had had a special or significant encounter with God. But the problem can be, whether it's a pillar of stones that they build, or as Peter wants to build a house, the problem can be that these markers commemorate the past instead of pointing God's people towards the future. And I sympathize with Peter, I really do. I mean, for one brief, shining moment, Peter stood in the very presence of God. All that beauty, all that power, all that perfection. Who would want to leave that? But they had to leave, because Peter had work to do. So did the other disciples, and so did Jesus. And you know how that story goes. You know the work that Jesus had to do. But they had to leave. This morning we are going to baptize Annabelle Joy Frisch as the newest member of our Christian community. And it is going to be beautiful and powerful and perfect. And I wish that I could say that the journey of faith and the journey of trying to be faithful, that it would always be as beautiful and easy and perfect as the baptismal ceremony is. But I know that there will be times when Annabelle struggles, when her faith is tested, and she is going to need all of us to support her. Baptism is something that happens once in our lives, but God's call to live into the covenant of our baptism, that is a call that continues every moment of every day. That's why we come together with parents and sponsors and godparents as a Christian community to pledge our support, not just to Annabelle, but to one another.
Amen.
And I wish I could promise you, the members of the Custer Community Church, that you will always feel the presence of God as palpably as Peter did on that mountaintop, where he longed to stay, but I can't. I can tell you that you too will sometimes struggle with your faith, and you too will sometimes struggle to remain faithful. I can tell you that sometimes you will pay a price for doing what you believe is right. I'll tell you that when Jesus said that to follow him means that we take up our own crosses in order to do so, he wasn't just blowing smoke. And it is so tempting, especially when the future is uncertain and the future looks like it's going to take a lot of work. It is so tempting to want instead to build monuments to the past and just stay in the comfort of what is familiar. But calm seas never made for a skilled sailor. And Christians believe that sometimes some things must experience death in order to experience rebirth. Even when the future seems uncertain, our call as Christians is to step boldly into it. Sisters and brothers, we move forward for the sake of the gospel. We move into the future unafraid because we believe that God has a plan and a purpose for us, whether we are on top of mountains or down in valleys. In the words of that old African-American spiritual that I know you've heard me quote before, but I just love so deeply, I don't feel no ways tired. I've come too far from where I started from. And nobody told me that the road would be easy. And I don't believe God brought me this far to leave me. And that's ultimately what the story of Jesus' transfiguration is about. It's about how even when we might not perceive the presence of God, God is always present. We are always just a breath away from God's glory. I mean, you think about Jesus' transfiguration, right? That glory and that splendor and that light, that was always there. That was always inside Jesus. And yet his disciples weren't always aware of it. At least not physically, viscerally aware of it until that mountaintop moment. But it was always there. The presence of God within Jesus Christ, it was always there. And the presence of God, it is here now. We are still that close to the glory of God, even in this moment. Even if we don't perceive it directly. That light is all around us right now. Although we may not see it. But if this life of faith has taught me anything, it's that what we see is not all that there is to life. We all at times must walk through the valley of death's shadow. No one gets to stay on the mountaintop and experience the highs of life forever, no matter how badly we might want to, and that is okay. It's okay because God can and often does use those times when we're feeling low to help us grow. Because God is with us in the valleys as well as up on the peaks. And our God is a God that can transform darkness into light. Amen.